Welcome to Jude, the podcast. I am David Jude. I am your host for this show, and we thank you for joining us for another episode. This one has a really powerful message. I hope you will listen to it. I hope you enjoy it, share it, get it to those who maybe need it. It's a story about addiction and PTSD and depression and how that impacts first responders. As a previous first responder, I could tell you, at least back in the day, we'll say that mental health and the idea of self-care really wasn't a big topic that was talked about or shared, and it greatly impacts, the police, the fire, EMS, dispatchers, medical personnel, doctors and nurses, military, etc. So, anyway, it's a very important topic with a great message. And on this episode, my longtime friend Derek Grant joins us and talks about his path through these things and how he came to realize that he needed help. And he did the most important thing in his life, which is got that help. It's a great story. It's a really powerful message. Again, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you share it. And if you think you may need some help, or you know somebody that needs some help, all we can do is just encourage you to have that person or work with that person to get them to reach out to get the help. There's help out there. There's resources available. Derek will share his story about how he did that. Hopefully that's an inspiration. We'll also have some links in the show notes and some information there. But anyway, thank you so much for all the listens and downloads. I just can't tell you what that means to us. Thank you for sharing the show. Be sure to check out our sponsors. Again, just thank you so much. Enjoy the show. All right, man. Glad you're here.
Hey, it's good to be here.
Yeah, it is
good to see you, man.
It is good to see you. I was thinking just a second ago, you know what we forgot? Your watch.
I forgot all about that.
We've probably had your watch longer than you've had your watch.
I would say about 4 or 5 years now.
It would at least be 3, wouldn't it? Probably is 4 years.
I would say it would have to be 4 or 5. Yeah. It was 2016, I think, 17. So, yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to go after that, but just to save myself some pride.
And, the thing about it, the irony is, if you hadn't brought that up, I'd forgotten again. So even if it was here, I'd been...
Man, it's a nice one. It's got brown leather on it, and I think a blue face. I bought one.
I don't remember. Yeah. If you say so.
So we had a cookout. I guess it was like a fall cookout. It'd be right before Rachel got married. Because that was kind of we made a joke that it was a small cookout, and we made a joke that'll be bigger than the whole wedding.
Because y'all were just finishing up with the house next door, getting everything.
Yeah, that's right. And so he and his wife stayed with us, and as you do, you take off your watch when you spend the night or go to sleep, whatever else, and it got left at the house. We're like, all right, yeah, we'll just drop it in the mail. No big deal. We'll send it back.
And here we are
at the house.
2024.
It is 24, isn't it?
and I can't poke fun at him because I don't think I ever remembered to even ask for it. So I forgot all about it.
No, I don't think you did. I think we're like, hey, man, we got your watch. We'll drop it back in the mail. Or it's like, well, I'll be back down in Bowling Green before too awful long. I'll bring it to you. And I've been a couple times, and yeah. And then it got, as things do, it got misplaced or, shoved aside somewhere, which happens every 6 months or so, just so you know.
Well, the irony is you've actually maintained that watch for about 4 or 5 years, which is probably about 4 years longer than I would have because, as you can tell, I'm not wearing a watch because I can never keep up with one.
Yeah. And we just ran into it probably in the last couple of weeks. Haven't seen it in forever. And it wasn't because of the show. I knew you were scheduled to be here. It wasn't because of that. There was something else we were doing. Maybe it's wrapping Christmas gifts or something that I don't even know where it is. But we stumbled into it, like, holy crap, that's Derek's watch. I was like, well, he's coming to us. So he'll make it easy for me to remember to bring it. And sure, Stacy just sent me a text about 5 minutes ago, like, we forgot his watch. I'm like, crap.
That's good.
So we'll make it the perpetual promise that I'll mail it back or bring it to you or something. Yeah, we'll get it to you. We'll get it to you. So what's new with you, man? Anything good?
No, day by day, I guess, kind of like you, feeling my way through this retirement thing.
Yeah. It's a good place to be in it.
It is a good place to be. And it's one of those things that, you always think about, what it'll be like when it finally gets here. And then when it does get here, you're like, this isn't a bad thing.
It's not a bad place to be.
No. And I'm working again. I went back to work about 6 or 7 weeks after I retired. But it's something totally different in the civilian world. And, so actually working 2 jobs, the second part-time job, something I do just cause I want to, and I enjoy, and, probably working more hours than I was before I retired, but it's different.
I always say it's, so I've been retired, I think 6.5 years now. And I keep saying, man, retirement time goes by so much faster than I guess our first half of our career lives.
It was, 1 year this week. I retired a year ago. So it's been right at a year now.
You've only been retired a year? Mm-hmm. I say that, and I thought you'd been retired longer than that.
Yeah, I retired at the end of last year and last of December, and because I started work at my current job, it was right about the week of Valentine's Day, I guess. So, yeah.
Well, then yeah.
So it's like you said, it's everything you ever hoped it would be. Everything you hoped it would be.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, we had plenty of those conversations, didn't we, before?
Yes.
So come on in. The water's fine.
Right. Yeah, your normal seat is empty. Pull you up there.
Yeah, it's a good place to be. I would still have that advice for anybody that, at least from our previous career, to say, hey, when it's time to go, it's time to go. And
it's just one of those things that, it's, I was always told, that, you will just know when the day gets here, you will know. And I knew for a while, before I finally did, that it was definitely time.
Yeah.
And no regrets. Loved my career. Enjoyed every minute of it, or for the most part. But, it was just, I knew when I retired that, even before I even got to that point, I knew when I did retire, I felt pretty confident I wanted to go into something different.
Yeah.
I didn't know what, and it was kind of the way it did play out. It was just going to kind of see what's out there and whatever comes up. But I knew I wanted to do something different. Yeah.
Well, same for me. Same. And I still give that advice. You'll know when it's time, and just my opinion, of course, but for those that haven't gotten there yet, they look at you with, that doesn't make any sense. That's stupid advice. Because you're not there yet.
Right. Right.
When you get there, you'll know it.
And a couple of weeks after I retired, a good friend of mine, a guy I have a lot of respect for, he called me and he said, man, I've got the retirement gig for you. And I said, hey, I'm all ears. What's that? And he was working for a local agency, and he said, a school resource officer position, police position. I said, no, I don't think so. Yeah. I said, I do appreciate you calling. I really do.
Good to hear from you.
Yeah. And he said, and he says, well, this is different, man. Holidays off and, spring break and fall break and that kind of thing off. And I said, yeah, no. I just, I said, I really think I want to look, down some different avenues. And he said, will you at least sit down and talk to me? I said, absolutely. I'll buy you dinner. But I said, I'm still not going to be, I still want to look at something different, but I do appreciate it.
Yeah. Same. I felt good when I left. I left on my own terms. I left happy. there's no issues with that, because some don't, right? Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough to at least listen to the elders that came along, and then just through my positions to see different people and how they left. And I thought I was at least astute. Is that the right word? Observant enough to pay attention to them. And I thought, man, there's a difference between folks who are retiring from law enforcement. That's where we're going to here in just a minute. Retiring from law enforcement, happy versus those that aren't happy. And I didn't want to get myself into a position. I had a great career, just like you. Love 99% of it. Even the shit that we got into, there's something that you love about that. Yep. It's the job, but I was like, no, it's time to go. And I put myself on a timeline, because I went back to school knowing that if, when I graduate, I need to move on.
Right.
And so student loan payments is really kind of, it kind of concreted me into, hey man, you're going to have to go before these payments kick in. But that I was okay with it, because I'd prepared myself, and I knew that, if I go down this path, then I'm telling myself I need to go. Mm-hmm. And I just share that with you to say it was time, and I was happy with it. And, I miss the people, because there's some excellent people that you meet.
And I agree. It's, what's the old adage? I miss all the clowns. I just don't miss the circus.
Yeah, no kidding.
And I'm by no means calling any of it necessarily a circus. It's just, it's a lot of, like you said, a lot of the people, there are friendships or bonds there that will never go away.
Yeah.
And, you love those guys and gals and will forever. But, it was just, it's like anything, it runs its course, and over time,
yeah,
when it's time.
Yeah. Some days I look back and it's like, well, maybe I should have, done the SRO thing, or maybe the sheriff's department, or, something else. Maybe I should have done that. And then I catch myself like, nah, man, you're fine right where you are.
Log on YouTube, and then you're like, no, I don't miss that.
Yeah.
I don't miss that.
There's a lot of stuff I don't miss.
Right.
Because now my conversations are, with more folks in that situation. Like, I'm thinking about it. I was like, you'll know when it's time to go. Yeah. Come on, man. When it's time. Yeah. All good. So you're thinking about hiring a private investigator, huh? Think knowledge, experience, and trust. Think DPJ Consulting. Listen, we're the folks you want on your team. Whether it's a criminal matter, corporate, or administrative issue, or maybe something more personal, you need to make the right choice for you. Our house of expertise at DPJ Consulting can help you with investigations, and that can mean a whole lot of different things. Pre-employment background checks, personal VIP security, and so much more. Check us out at dpjconsulting.com. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, or give us a call at 855-TEAM-DPJ. That's 855-TEAM-DPJ. Give us a call. It costs nothing to talk. It costs you everything if we don't.
Yeah, every now and then I'll have somebody call me and they'll ask me, and they'll be like, so, I'm thinking this and this. What do you think? I said, man, I can't answer that. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah,
where are you at with it?
Right.
Yeah. I was thinking about, and this kind of get us into the some of the topics that we'll talk about today, because I think we got a super, I wouldn't even call it important. I think it's critical to spend some time talking about.
I agree.
The stuff that we're going to talk about. And I guess I'll lead with it a little bit. Stacey and I were talking not too long ago about, there was something about death came up in our conversation somehow, about like, let me back up for a second. So the stereotypical, I think I'm safe in saying this, the stereotypical police response when you go home is, hey, sweetheart, how was your day? And the answer is, well, I had a fine day. It was a good day. Well, what'd you do? A little of this, little of that. But when you define a little of this and a little of that, and for me, I never defined it at home.
No.
I kept a professional life separate from a personal life. And I was very happy with that. I was Rachel's dad. Mm-hmm. You know, I just slept in the county and I was Rachel's dad. And that's what I wanted to be. So good or bad, I don't know if I did Rachel and Stacy a disservice by not including them in it.
You know, I was a lot in the same. It was just, you know, one thing about this career, whether, you know, you be first responder, military, you know, police, fire, EMS, whatever the case may be, you know, it makes you cold in a lot of ways that, you know, sometimes, and I say this in reference to what you were talking about, that going home in the evening, you get home from work and, you know, hey, honey, how was your day?
Yeah.
And, you know, my wife would be like, well, it was just, my day was just, it was a mess. It was, you know, so-and-so in this department said so-and-so in this department had a bad attitude. And so now she thinks she's a bitch and it's just causing all kinds of drama.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, man, I saw a guy wrapped around a tree last night.
Yeah.
You know, and that is the absolute total wrong response. I say that on my end, I was wrong because, you know, at that time, what was going on in her day or in her life, that was a big deal. You know, it was stressful. It did add negativity to her day. And you can't, you know, we have to understand, and probably one thing we were never really taught early in our careers is you can't compare that kind of stuff in your head because, you know, the things that we would see, I mean, it's just not meant for normal people to see every day.
Yeah. I think I did a pretty good job. You know, she can answer it. I think I did a pretty good job of listening to Stacy because she would come home, as we all should, right? Mm-hmm. Both parties here should have those conversations. And I think I did a pretty good job of listening. I sucked at sharing my day.
Right.
You know, so to me, it just become compartmentalized and bottled up. And one of those things like, who really cares? Who gives a shit about what I saw today? It doesn't make a difference, you know. But anyway, to our conversation that she and I had not too long ago, there was some type of death investigation. It doesn't matter what it was. There's just death involved. And so she finally said, she was, I guess you've probably seen your share of this stuff. And I look at her because she dealt with a lot of death in the hospital environment, right? It's a little different. And I was like, yeah, I guess I have. I mean, I don't know that there's not a method of death that I haven't seen. And by seeing, I mean being in the middle of it, right? You know, I've seen stabbings, shootings, on fire,
accidentals, drownings. I mean, you name it.
You name it. Not to mention just the goofiest of manners of death that happened.
And that's just it. People wonder why, you know, policemen or any first responder are paranoid parents, but you've seen some of the most ridiculous things happen to children and adults. You're like, you know, people are like, oh, they're just doing this. What could happen? Well, actually, you know.
Yeah, you know, like, I've seen scalpings. I don't quite call it beheadings, but scalpings. And, you know, we're going to get into some pretty touchy stuff here, but the mechanism to deal with it is you just somehow dismiss it. And I always call them plank heads, right? Yeah. You think about a car crash into a wooden fence, right? They're plank heads, but, you know, my gosh, and I'm visualizing those things now, or, you know, searching for bodies. And I mean, we could just go on and on here with the stories that we've seen.
Yeah, and you look back on it and you stop and you think about it, whether you were on a scene of, regardless of what it was, what kind of trauma it was, but some type of event that to most people would be just a horrific situation to even see. And if you look back on it over time, I mean, there are times maybe you've been out 10, 12 hours, it's 3, 4 in the morning, you're going to be tied up on this scene for a while, you haven't eaten in 6, 8 hours. And you catch yourself literally standing over this scene, whether you be taking notes or, you know, watching a boundary line or whatever for nobody to cross. And you're sitting there eating a sandwich or something. Yeah. You know, like it's.
Thinking it's cool. Thinking, hey, look at this brain matter.
Yeah, I've got a minute to eat here. I'm going to try to eat real quick before the media gets here. Yeah. You know, whatever. Right. And, you know, I'm sure people looking from afar would think, what kind of sick human beings is this? But what else are you going to do, right?
Well, I mean, that's what you're employed to do, is to go provide that service. And it's just interesting, right? That and we're not alone. We're two of a small fraction of first responders. But, if you had this conversation with just about any first responder, probably every first responder, it's the same conversation. We're all dealing with these issues. And so far we've just talked about death. We haven't got into the other sick shit that's out in our society. So,
and that's one reason, this is one thing. And I don't know that I had ever been told a more truer statement. I worked for over a period of 23 and a half years. I worked for two agencies like yourself.
And same two agencies.
Yeah. And when I went through the academy at the first one, that would have been in 99. I was in the academy and the chaplain come and spoke to us. And I don't remember the topic of this course he was teaching or what. I honestly have no idea why the chaplain was in front of the class that day, but neither here nor there. He was standing there talking, and he said, there is one thing that you all will realize as time goes on, and you that are married can go ahead and prepare your spouses for it. Those of you that aren't married, when you get ready to be, you go ahead and tell them it's coming. When, if you have a school teacher and they have a New Year's Eve party at their house, you might have some nurses there, some teachers there, maybe the ball coach from the local high school team, various people. The mailman might be there, whatever. They said, same if you go to a party at a doctor's house or whoever's house. But if you go to a party or a New Year's Eve gathering or whatever at a policeman's house, guess what you see there?
Yeah.
And guess what's about the only thing you see there is a policeman or somebody that's married to one. Yeah. And firemen are a lot in the same, and so forth. And and I think a lot of that is like what you said, you having those type of conversations, whether you're sitting there having a drink or, cutting up, doing whatever, you have conversations that most people look at you and think these guys just are not normal.
Yeah.
They're talking about some horrific thing that took place that they literally saw a couple of days ago, and they're talking about it just like it's, going to the grocery store and picking up milk and bread or something, And
it's like everybody's interested, as they should be, because it's very interesting work. It's fascinating work, right? Until you get into some of the details, right? And you're like,
right.
Yeah, I didn't know so much want to hear that. I was like, well, I didn't know where to cut that off. Yeah. I don't know how to stop that conversation, because to me, it's
part of the story.
Tuesday afternoon, that's the call I went to, and this is what I saw, but I didn't know you didn't want to hear those details.
Right. And it's, because there's times, people will tell you, hey, man, tell me what's been going on. Tell me something cool. Well, you'll tell them something, and then they'll just give you this grossed out look like, oh, my gosh, are you serious? I'm like, I thought that's what you were asking to hear, man.
Do you still carry a lot of memories? Can you still, this perverted, gross side of the job that we're talking about, and I don't know what term to give it, but do you still carry some of that with you? Do you still see a lot of those scenes and things like that?
Yes. And it's very, it's very bizarre, because there are some, things that I've seen or been present at, and you could bring it up if you were there too or something. I'd be like, you know what? I forgot all about that. Yeah, we were there.
Yeah.
And then there are some that may have been 15 years ago, and you can see it like it's transpiring in front of you now.
I'll never forget some of the things.
There's a handful that, and I could name, quite a few off the top of my head that I can hear exact words that were spoken.
Yeah.
Obviously it was always terrible when you were dealing with someone's child.
Yeah.
And especially, especially if parents were present, whether it be a car wreck or whatever the case may be. And, I can still remember questions they asked me, things they said, reactions. It's stuff that, it just really never goes away.
It never goes away. One of the things that I didn't like about it is, for the most part, I think I disassociated with most of it. Now, when Stacey and I started talking about death again, a lot of these things are coming back to me, and I'm seeing, things in my mind as we're talking. I can see scenes that I'm at. There's a couple of them that I personalized, unfortunately, while I was working them, and those will never go away from me.
No.
I mean, I can't get those memories away because I lumped it into something that I can associate with my personal life.
Yep.
Kids, being a parent, that type of thing.
Or like when you get dispatched, let's say, for example, it's a fatality wreck.
Mm-hmm.
And, and as you know, a lot of times you don't know that till you get there, obviously. But occasionally, depending on who's calling it in, depending on the circumstances, you know that when you're on your way, what you're getting ready to drive up on. And this sounds horrible, but at the same time, it's the truth. I know anytime I was going to anything that I thought involved a fatal, I'm thinking in the back of my head, I hope they're from Tennessee.
Right.
Or Indiana. Of course, the interstate run real close to where I was at, or Indiana, somewhere, because mom and dad are most likely not going to show up on the scene.
Right.
Or husband or wife, or whatever the case. Or the biggie, and this is where it gets into a lot of what you just touched on with the personalizing, where it really gets personal. And you don't always have to do this, and a lot of it depends on the county you're in. But if you got to do the death notification.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Because I don't care how well an agency trains you. I don't care how comfortable or uncomfortable you are doing it. Not that it's ever a comfortable thing.
Right.
You know what I mean by that. That is something that you never get used to.
Yeah.
It never goes away. I could recite to you almost every one I've ever done.
Right.
And, you walk up to that house at 2, 3 in the morning, and that's where it starts to get personalized, because you start seeing personal belongings. You see a pair of Nikes sitting on the porch, and you're thinking, okay, I know who those belong to.
Yeah.
And, or you knock on the door and you see the bedroom light come on.
Yeah.
And then the hall light.
Yeah.
And then the foyer light. And then mom or dad opens the door. And at that point, that's when they're looking at you you can see them go ghost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing they ask you is, what's wrong?
Yeah.
When you know as well as they do, they know, they may not know who or exactly what happened, but they know why you're there.
Yeah.
And the various reactions, and I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Anything from people wanting to kick you out of their house, to just, people rolling around in the floor screaming. It's horrible. And it's hard not to personalize that, especially if you're telling somebody that's alone, because at that point you can't leave them alone.
Right.
So you then come in, you do what little you can to try to console or comfort. Ask them, do you have a pastor I can call? Do you have a family member I can call? Well, that person's got to get up and come from wherever they are. And so as you're sitting there with them, they're possibly making phone calls. You're seeing pictures on the wall of probably who you're notifying them on.
Yeah.
And, how do you not personalize something when it's, you're seeing all of that and hearing all of that? And that was probably, of all the things, the notifications are probably way at the top for me of things that always, stood out.
Yeah. I was thinking too, our at least our last employer, and I have nothing bad to say. We're not
right.
But you're often by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to do all of these roles by yourself. And so two things coming up. I'm thinking of a car crash where a young lady died. One that I personalized. And so what's mom and dad do when, daughter doesn't come home? You go out and look for them. Well, where do they come? To the crash scene. where I'm the only person at the crash scene working a fatal. So you got, 1,000 things to do. You got scene security. Let's just talk about the job. You're trying to protect the scene, right? And here comes Ding Dong driving through the car. Like, that's not Ding Dong. That's Dad.
Yep. I've had that happen. Exactly.
Right. And we're just two people.
Yep.
Right. And you're like, oh man, did this I've got chills now telling you. It's like, this just took a turn. And, now you got to set everything aside because the most important thing is taking care of them at the moment.
Right.
And so
you totally lose track of, and then to complicate it is, well, what if that is parents of the passenger, the driver's alive and intoxicated?
Yeah.
Now you have a whole new matter you've got to deal with as mom and dad are there.
Yeah.
Obviously, mourning.
Yeah.
They're, because you tell that I had a similar situation, and without getting into too much detail with the actual crash, there were 4 people in the vehicle. One died on impact. One died as they were extricating them from the car. A third one died within 24-hour period at a hospital, and then the fourth one survived. But it was out in the county. 3 sets of parents showed up. 4 people in the car, 3 show up. And at this point, all they knew, the parents, were that someone had died on impact.
Mm.
So you have 3 sets of parents there asking who. And I didn't even know.
Right.
Because at this point, I don't know, which child is yours.
Right.
And even if I knew which one was yours, I don't know if they're the one that's passed away or not. I don't know who's driving at this point because, the firemen, EMTs, they're over there doing their thing, and I'm not going to get in their way.
Right.
And, I remember the most solemn sounding voice you could ever imagine, lady walking up beside me. And I think at this point she was just numb, and it didn't appear panicked, but you could tell she was just zoned out of the world, looking at me and asking me if her daughter was okay.
Yeah.
And, you don't want to get her hopes up.
Right.
But at the same time, you sure don't want to get her hopes down and lead her to believe that it may be her daughter that's passed when you had no idea. And it was just, it's a
weight, isn't it?
It's hard to explain.
It's hard to explain.
It is hard to, you almost stammer over your words trying to explain what's going through your head at the time.
Yeah.
Because, you look back on it, heck, I don't know what was going through my head at the time other than is this real?
Trying to process all this stuff and do a job correctly and all the humanitarian needs that need to go into it and whatever else, it's a lot of weight to carry around. And I think about that often. Did you ever feel like a disconnect from the agencies? I mean, I guess where I'm going with that is I remember the same conversation from the chaplain at our first employer.
Yes.
As you were telling the story, I was like, I do remember that conversation. Yes. But as we got into, later in our careers, I don't remember conversations ever really coming up about how to manage or how to deal with this. Let's talk a minute about sex. Sex is part of life. It's beautiful and it's essential to living a great life. Enter my friends at Shameless Care, who have created something cool for your personal health care. Shameless Care offers a variety of products you may be interested in. ED treatments, STI treatments, STD testing. So how does it work? Well, that's the easy part. You go to shamelesscare.com, you choose the product you're interested in, you complete an online questionnaire, which is reviewed by a medical doctor, by the way. Pay for the product, and in a couple of days, discreet packaging arrives right to your doorstep. Their customer service is second to none. They're always responsive, and they care. Listen, Ashley's the best. Tell her I said hello. They're a small business ran by people like you and me, and they're incredible. And the best part? We can save you some money. click on the link in the show notes, use the code Jude at checkout. It's JUDE, and save $30 on your first purchase. That's not bad, huh? Visit our website to learn more, shamelesscare.com, and don't forget the promo code Jude.
No, and there were two things, looking back on now, and when I say this, I want to make it clear that I think they are moving towards doing these type of things now.
Correct, yeah.
And so I don't want to make it, if anybody that knows the agencies that I work for, I don't want to make it look like they're not doing these type of things at this point. But, of course, when we started, it's been a minute, it's a few days ago. Yeah. And there were two things that I was never taught how to do. Okay, I was taught how to, number one, survive.
Yeah.
You were taught how weapon retention and how to fight and how to protect yourself and how not to get sued and how to properly investigate and interview and all this. But you were never taught really how to process trauma.
Mm-mm.
And you were never taught how to process retirement. That was two things, because, as far as the retirement end, basically, I don't know about you, but the only thing I remember, of course, you're nervous as all get out in the academy anyway, right. And they could break it down and you probably still wouldn't remember it at that point.
Right.
It's probably something needs to be in the first 5 years of your career. But, they come in, they're like, okay, if you look up here on the bulletin board, what we're talking about here is a 401k account. I recommend you get one of those. Okay. Class is over.
Yeah.
That'll help your retirement. That's all we got for today.
Right.
And so, but the biggie is, processing trauma like that in a healthy way or, not harboring so much, because the one thing about our career is whether you be, law enforcement, firefighter, EMT, military, any, or some of the, even I don't want to forget a lot of the civilian personnel, the dispatchers, man. Hat tip to dispatchers. I don't see how they do it.
No.
They don't get near the appreciation they deserve. They have to deal with, even though they may not see a lot of it with their own eyes, I can't imagine the stress they go to if they're sending you somewhere and it's some guy with a gun or something.
Yeah.
And then they know you're there. They know you've gotten out of your car and now they can't get you to answer.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what's going through their head?
Oh my gosh.
And those folks and lab personnel and all those civilian employees, none of us, I feel like, were ever really taught how to, in a healthy way, to process that trauma without our type A personality coming forward and being like, well, I saw this last week, but I'm tough. I'm a policeman. I'm strong. I can do push-ups. I'm okay. And, that type A personality really gets in the way of, you don't want to show a sign of weakness or a sign that you can't handle something because you're afraid that you'll be viewed upon as weak, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know what? And I don't think, that was never the teaching. The teaching, at least my experience, was, you have to put on a persona. No one was ever taught to be that. It just seems like the environment creates that.
Right.
And then to your point, there's never any discussion about how to properly manage it and deal with it from the other side. So, we were going to have somebody come on because our previous employer, and I think law enforcement as a whole, is starting to really focus on mental health of their people and how to deal with these things. Somebody from our former agency was going to come on, and interestingly, the agency denied that person. So,
which is unfortunate because, obviously without saying that person's name, pretty good idea who you're talking about. Yeah. And he's a forward thinking guy who, is doing a lot of good things in the areas that we're discussing.
That's right.
And
that's right.
Hopefully that will help people 20 years down the road that are sitting there newly retired like yourself and I, that hopefully have processed things a lot better because of some things he's implementing.
Well, that's right. And that quest is not over to get him or anyone really to speak on that. But yeah, I agree with you on that. So we'll keep that going. Yeah. So I don't remember any of those teachings, like how to deal with it. And for me, I just locked it. It still is. I mean, it still is locked away. And I don't even know what it means when I say that to you. I've never had a release to, I find myself in this position of, do I need that? Probably. What are you going to do with it?
And for me, I guess it was later in my career where I started discovering that I needed that and that release, because,
what do you mean by that? What do you mean what did you discover?
Well, it started as a slow depression.
Yeah.
And, it was, there were things that, you start losing the appetite. You get to where you can't sleep. You can't fall asleep. When you do fall asleep, you're waking up several times in the night. Everything started becoming negative to me. It's just, you could just take anything and almost spin something negative out of it. And then obviously you start looking, without even realizing you're doing it, you start looking for coping mechanisms, which for me, a big one was alcohol.
Yeah.
And, when I say it, I don't necessarily mean bar hopping. A lot of people be like, well, bars aren't really my thing and I don't get out much. And, well, other than, occasional concerts or something like that, as far as bar hopping, I didn't get out much either, really. Right. It was, at home in my recliner, in front of the television.
Yeah.
And, and now looking back, I can see myself, once you get to about that 8 to 10 year mark, things starting to change a little bit. You start getting closer to that 15-year mark and things really start taking a nosedive personally. And it really starts to have an effect on you in a lot of aspects of your life, just your marriage, your health.
Yeah.
And in which I know we'll get into it more here shortly, but I was, very, very depressed human being who, unbeknownst to me at the time, was dealing with a lot of PTSD issues and later turning to alcoholism.
Yeah.
Became a full-blown alcoholic, for lack of better words.
Let's touch on some of that. I mean, how did you come to the realization of recognizing PTSD and even alcoholism? Did you come to realization of knowing that before treatment, or only was it after seeking treatment that you realized what you were going through?
The alcoholism, obviously I was beginning, I was recognizing it before treatment, and as were other people around me, and it wasn't necessarily like coming to work with an odor, coming off of you or anything necessarily as much like that, as just on top of the depression and everything else, your mind is it almost becomes foggy. If that's a lack of better words, it's like, you could have that piece of paper in front of you there and you could give it to me. Well, my eyes would read it word for word, whether it be a memo at work or whatever the case may be. And then you might stop by my office tomorrow and say, hey, that memo I run by you yesterday, what do you think about that? And then I'm in this state of a pause.
Yeah.
I'm like,
better read that again.
Yeah. I'll get back with you in a few minutes on that, And it wasn't that I didn't care. It wasn't that I didn't read it. But, I was literally just getting zoned out in life in general. The depression, alcohol, everything was it was taking such a control that you couldn't focus on anything.
Did you think that was like a slow roll into control?
Yes, in a lot of ways, because I think a lot with the PTSD in a lot of ways because, and I was not in the military, so I'm not going to act like I was, but and we'll get into it more in a minute, but the treatment facility I went through, it was designed, it was for military veterans, first responder veterans. Everyone that went through this particular treatment center was one or the other. And so I went through with a lot of military guys, and obviously, and whether it be in group sessions or when they're telling their story or different things, you hear their story and their breakdown. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest differences that I saw in a lot of military compared to first responders is a lot of the military guys would be able to give you more specific events, so to speak. They were on a deployment and, there was like some severe gunfight, with whoever, or some type of explosion that took the lives of a lot of their, fellow, whatever, Army, Marines, whatever the case. With a lot of the military guys, when they would tell those stories, you would hear about a lot of those major events. But as you would hear the police or the firemen, or I don't want to leave out the EMTs because Lord knows they see.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. And, when you hear them tell their story, it's more of, kind of, the death by 1,000 wounds. It's, you go on this call and there's some type of brutal death. Then you go on this call and there's a child that's been molested or raped. And then you go on some other traumatic call. And then it's your day off and you hang out with your kids and go out to eat with your wife and
do paperwork to catch up.
do paperwork to catch up on all these gruesome things. Yeah. And then the next week I don't want to make it sound like every single day, every single week it's like that. But, over a period of 10, 15, 20 years, all that stuff starts to stack up over and over and over. And it's, it'll get you before you realize it.
Yeah.
And as for me, and again, you'll hear me say that a lot, as for me, because we're all different and we're all human and we all react different. As for me, it started me into a state of depression, and where I started self-medicating with alcohol. Yeah. And then, just the wheels start coming off after that.
You described that very well, and I've never really thought about it. I have thought about it to the point of saying, well, let me stop for a second. So where I'm at in life now is I kind of I'm analytical anyway, but I try to look and listen, the same thing we talked about earlier, listen to elders and other people. And I try to look and say, I'm not even sure at this point in life what I need. Right. I don't even know how to have introspection and say, hey, this is what you're feeling. This is what you're needing. So therefore I don't know the next step to take.
Well, and that was me because when it comes to mental health, like with you and I, our definition for years of mental health is we go on a call. You've got some dude that's talking to the trees, or he's seeing animals in the clouds, or doing some far out stuff. He tells you he's been down at the pond having a conversation with the ducks, and you're like, okay, that's mental health. That guy's out there. Okay, that's what mental health is. Yeah. But we never thought of mental health and mental health issues as being me and you. Yeah. And the consequences of what we do. We just looked at mental health as like somebody that was really far out there.
Or self-care would be, hey, go out with the guys and get drunk or whatever you're going to do.
Exactly. Yeah. And what I call that policeman love, that fireman love, it's, oh man, you down in the dumps. Well, Billy Joe down here is having a little bash and bonfire this weekend. We'll all have some cold ones and tell stories. Yeah. And you end up sitting there drinking cold ones, telling stories about all this gruesome stuff that's actually causing your problem.
Yeah. Not solving the problem.
And you're talking about it in a way that's not a healthy way to say of getting it off your chest, so to speak. And, my thing is I didn't know anything about recovery as far as mental health or alcoholism. And I know my wife had approached me several times along with one of my buddies saying, man, you've got to get a hold of this, or it's going to be bad. And but my idea of a recovery center is like they put me in a nightgown and they take my shoes away from me and put me in slippers.
Yeah.
And, I'm looking at four walls all day, and occasionally some doctor will come in with a clipboard, ask me 3 or 4 questions and leave.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't see where that's, which, I later learned that absolutely is not what it was like.
So, but to our point, right,
Yeah.
is we've never had any.
I didn't know.
Yeah, to say, and sometimes people look at you like, how the hell do you not know that? It's like, because my world has never exposed me to that.
No.
I have no exposure to
I
that.
thought the only people that were in recovery centers were the people that the judge made go there after I arrested them to lessen their charge or their bond
Right.
or whatever,
Right.
And thankfully, I had someone who came into my life that I started talking to during a lot of when we say when the wheels were coming off, because obviously, depression, mental health, PTSD, alcoholism, all of it together, it takes effect not only on your career, but on your marriage, on everything about you. And, man, I got to a point where I just felt like nothing was going right. And I'm not going to say, suicidal, but, I didn't really sit there thinking suicidal thoughts, but I'd be lying if I sit there and said I could really give a shit if I woke up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't go to sleep knowing I've got to get up and go another day tomorrow.
Yeah.
And
Self-value and self-worth
right.
don't exist.
Yes, it plummets. And, you really don't know what to do. And I called a guy who, man, he was as loyal as the sun coming up to me, buddy. We have become good friends over the years. But he was EAP personnel. And he was experienced in assisting people with these type of issues, and had conquered some own things, some of his own demons in his own life, and he really understood things from all perspectives. And man, at my worst and at my best, he hung with me through everything. And he is, I spent a lot of time talking to him, and especially when, and anybody who's ever dealt with alcoholism will understand this, is you always think that you can just conquer it on your own.
Right.
And, I used to tell him, like, I'd go have some blood work done for my annual physical, and man, my numbers were, matter of fact, I went once and they done the finger prick test on me, and the little tab and she looked at me and she said, I don't say this in a joking manner, sir, but you're literally off the charts. We can't register you with a finger prick. You're going to have to go have your blood drawn.
Registry for what? What numbers?
Like my triglycerides were, all of it. Triglycerides were like up over 1,200 at one point, and that was just a level I know they were at. They could have been higher. And
I guess I probably shouldn't ask you not to.
No, I don't care. I don't care a bit.
I wasn't even thinking at it.
My liver enzymes were like 6 times the normal levels. And just various things. Nothing was right. Even little crazy stuff you don't think about, all your potassium level, everything would be off. And, so like I would go to this guy who I'd been confiding in. I'd be like, all right, man, I'm going to straighten myself up. You know what? That Fireball whiskey, I'm putting it down. I know that's what's sending my triglycerides up. It's going to be vodka and diet fruit juice from now on. All right. And that's going to fix all this.
That'll take care of it.
Yeah. I'm going to be a diet drinker now. Okay. And that's going to fix everything. And, you can imagine how that went, and, that certainly did. And of course he knew that, when I would tell him that stuff that I was falling on my face, but he also knew that he couldn't help me until I was ready.
Yeah.
Until I was ready to own it. And I was ready to look in the mirror and say, I've got a problem here I can't control anymore.
You got to follow at your own pace, I guess.
Yeah. And man, he stayed with me through it all. And hats off to family too. My wife knew I had a problem, and she was, like any marriage, we've, been married close to, not quite, but close to 20 years now. And you have your ups and downs, and, we could all sit here and have guy talk and I'll give all of our complaints. But in this situation, she was gold, man. She was great. Yeah. And, she tolerated a lot. And, I know it got to a point one night, I guess I would have still been on a work. I don't know why I was in Frankfurt, because I wasn't working in Frankfurt at the time, but I was up there. You probably know where I was sleeping at what facility I was residing in up there that night. Yep. Sitting there in a room by myself, and man, I was a blubbering. I was in a bad way. It was, life had gotten very, very dark, and it was bad. And, like I said, my wife she was getting at her wits' end. She'd been pushing me for a while to get some help, and this had been going on for years at this point. And I called this guy I'm talking about, and I don't remember a lot of our discussion.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I was drunk during the conversation. I know I was, but, I was calling him, and I was like, man, you got to send me somewhere. I don't want to go to no hospital. Okay. You can tell them I'm not going to hurt myself if they will let me keep my shoelaces,
Right.
But I said, I don't know anything about this stuff. I don't know what to do. And I'm basically leaving it in your hands. You know way more about this than I do.
Is that when you knew?
Yes.
Is that when you?
This is when I had gotten to a point to where there was no fixing it by myself, and I knew it. And I was, and it had gotten to a point to where my doctor actually looked at me, and she said, no physician can tell you, what your liver to an extent regenerates itself. It'll repair itself, so to speak. And she said, based on your liver enzymes and the things you're describing, because I was, she said, you can't tell when that magical line, or that imaginary line, I should say, is going to be crossed, that you're going to start going into liver failure. But she said, I can tell you this, you're going to cross it at any given moment, maybe tomorrow, maybe a year from tomorrow, maybe 2 years from tomorrow. But she said, you're going to die a very young man.
But you're there.
Yeah, but you're there. Yeah, you're there. Yeah, it's just a matter of what day it's going to happen. And, of course, when she first tells you that, your heart sinks, man. You get that pit in your stomach. You're like, oh, my God. And then when you leave, you get out in your truck and you go to leave, and it's almost like it's not real anymore. And you drive across the street and go through the liquor store drive-through, right, because you're just – and people are like, why? They don't understand. You're not thinking why right there. You're thinking, how do I numb this right now? And so I got in a bad way that night, and man, I was in rough shape, mentally, physically, everything. And I got to where I couldn't hardly go, a full day without getting sick. I'd wake up sick, not hungover, but body is demanding, I got to have alcohol now.
Yeah.
And would get violently ill. And when I called him and told him, and I said, man, you got to help me get somewhere. But I said, I've just got one request. I said, you got to get me out of Kentucky. I said, you have to get me out of here, because if I'm here, as soon as I find out one of my girls has got a ball game 30 miles down the road, I'm going to be calling somebody to pick me up at the front gate.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to complete a program here. I will tell you and admit right now, I can't do that.
Yeah.
And he gave me 2 phone numbers that night. Of course, we obviously talked about a lot of things, but he gave me 2 phone numbers. He said, this first one's in Utah. And he said, this second one, I don't know much about it, but it's in Texas out by San Antonio somewhere. He said, call them first thing in the morning. He said, when you get up, make these phone calls. And of course, he made sure that I wasn't going to go anywhere that night or, anything crazy. And so I agreed to those terms, and I got up the next morning and I called that Utah phone number. And I don't know why they didn't answer. I can't. Maybe we're there on Mountain Time or whatever time that Utah's on. I don't even know.
Yeah, I don't either. Utah time.
Yeah, Utah time. And I was calling from Eastern time and up there. Nobody answered the phone. And I remember thinking, what the hell? Here I am, total train wreck. I'm trying to get somewhere and they won't answer the telephone.
Yeah.
Which
you have one job.
Yeah. Which turned out to be an absolute blessing.
Yeah.
Because as soon as they didn't answer, I start flipping through this little where I was taking notes when I was talking to him the night before. And I'm like, okay, there's this place. It's called Warrior's Heart in Bandera, Texas. Okay. I'm the son of a truck driver. And even in my adult life, I've traveled a lot, whether it be with the kids or with work. And I've been to Texas quite a few times, whether it be as a child with my dad or as an adult. And I'm like, Bandera, Texas. I have no idea where the hell this is.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I have no idea is, okay, Paris, Kentucky is probably about 10, 15 times the size of Bandera.
Oh, is
Texas.
it? Yeah.
Okay. You've got one main intersection and that's it. But it was a place called Warrior's Heart. And I called them, and it's a recovery facility. It's actually a 500-some acre ranch. And it is for military veterans, first responder, retirees, veterans. And I called them, told them a lot about what I was going through. And they as you see these pictures coming up here, they've just opened up a second location in Virginia. And so I tell them what I was going through, and I told her on the phone, and I'm sure I was a crying, blubbering mess then too. I said, look, you need to get me on an airplane quick, because I said, I don't need to sit here and think about it. And she said, I'll need to check and process your insurance information. I said, I'm in a room by myself right now, and I'll be honest, I don't really want to go downstairs where the copy machines and all. She said, take pictures of it and text it to me. Here's my cell phone. This is an admissions lady who's never met me. These people were amazing. So I text her pictures of the front and back of my insurance card, and I think maybe my license or something. She calls me back in a couple of hours and says, can you be here Tuesday? I said, I should be able to. Yes. So at this point, this is like a Friday morning, I think. Yeah. And so keep in mind, this has not been discussed with Ashley yet.
Oh.
Okay. I've made this phone call and not told my wife yet. And if I did, I didn't remember telling her.
Right.
And so I call home and I'm like, look, there's this place called Warrior's Heart in Texas. I guess it's supposed to be a pretty good thing. It's a recovery center. Is all I kind of knew about it to tell her. And I said, they said if I get a one-way ticket to San Antonio Tuesday, they can pick me up at the airport. Can you get me a ticket? She goes, I'll call you right back. She didn't even ask me a freaking question, man. So, I'll call you back. And she texts me or calls me a short time later and says, I got your ticket for Tuesday morning.
Yeah.
So now, through the weekend, now I know I've made this decision. I meet with at some point, I think maybe it was, I guess Monday, maybe. I don't know. It was either Friday or Monday. I think it was Friday. I meet with the head of our agency at the time, and I told him, and man, I was embarrassed. That was a tough conversation, but I was like, look, I don't want anybody knowing this. Obviously, I'm going to be on sick time. And I told him the truth about where I was going, but I was like, look, this isn't for discussion. You know, I don't want to be knowing about this stuff, because at that point, I wasn't ready to talk about it and didn't know what was in store for me.
Yeah, you're still in the middle of it.
Right. And I go home for the weekend, and like there were things they recommended you bring. And so I tried to get some of that stuff ready. Like they said, bring a comfortable pair of hiking or walking shoes, because you do a couple of nature walks a week while you're there, and different things like that. And obviously toiletries and stuff, just whatever I could to try to stay busy. And now we fast forward to Monday. I'm leaving the next day.
Yeah.
And as you know, at some point on some level, I've coached both of my kids in sports. You know, my kids are a big thing to me in my life. And as a fifth grader, my youngest daughter had made the middle school softball team as a fifth grader, which was, you know, a pretty cool deal, you know, because she's 2 years away from middle school and she's made the team. And they played at Barron County, which is about 30 to 40 minutes from our house, that Monday night. And it was going to be the only game of the year I was going to get to see, because I was flying out the next day.
Yeah.
I was going to miss the whole season. So you can imagine how that was going over. And then my oldest daughter, I knew that this program, how long it was, 4 weeks from now, I was going to miss her birthday. So all that's going through my head. And so I go to her ball game that night. I took a lawn chair, sit way out towards, like down the first base line, away from everybody. I didn't really want to talk to anybody. Sitting down there by myself. Wasn't drinking, so you can imagine how I was feeling. Because, you know, I couldn't go a day without withdrawals at this point. I mean, just felt like a sack full of ass, man. You felt terrible. And so we watch her ball game, and I go home that night. And I didn't buy any alcohol, because I had this genius idea, you know. Again, I didn't know anything about this kind of stuff. I thought, well, if I show up with alcohol in my breath, they'll send me home. You know, I'm going to be stuck out in Texas looking for a plane ride home. And I started somewhat panic, because I had a buddy of mine. I didn't want to say goodbyes at the airport.
Right.
And so I had a buddy of mine that's going to come get me about 4 or 5 the next morning, get me to the Nashville airport. So Ashley goes to bed and my kids go to bed. And I start panicking, like, okay, I don't have anything.
Did they know that was your plan? Did they know you had a buddy picking you up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I told them the day before, and I told Ashley, I was like, look, this is tough enough as it is. You know, it's hard enough on me. It put you all through enough. I don't want to say goodbye to the kids in the morning when they're getting ready to leave for school or whatever. I don't want to have to say goodbyes to you at the airport, all this. That's just, right now, that's just adding even more to this. And I called a buddy of mine, and a close friend of mine. I said, man, can you be at my house at, like, I don't remember, it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. And he said, yeah, I'll be there. He said, I'll get you there. Yeah. And, but they all go to bed that night. I was like, I'm going to sleep on the couch. My goal is he's going to text me when he gets here. I'm going to try to slip out, not wake anybody in the house up, and I'll be gone when y'all get up in the morning. Well, I lay on the couch, and I'm having some withdrawals, shaking, I'm sweating, I'm getting sick. And I start panicking, man. Yeah. Like, I'm like, there's no alcohol in this house. And one of Ashley's favorite drinks, and I will preface this with saying Ashley can drink like a normal human being, okay? She can fix her little mixed drink. She can have one of them or have 4 of them. And then if she don't want to, she might not drink nothing else for 2 weeks, you know? Right. I mean, just a normal social drinker, so to speak. But she always kept a bottle of a Captain Morgan Spice rum in the house. Yeah. And I hate it. I mean, I would rather drink motor oil, man. It's stuff is nasty to me. And so, but I start panicking and I start looking for it. Cause I'm like, man, I'll squeeze my nose and just kill the fifth. Whatever I have to do. I'm not going to be I can't be getting sick on this airplane in the morning.
Yeah.
Dry heaving and withdrawals and all that stuff. Well, I start looking and I find a bottle. It's 2/3 of a bottle of Grey Goose. And it had been in there for a while. I think she had made some drinks with it or something, and it just sitting up in the forgotten cupboard there, I guess. And so I'm like, it's 2/3 of a fifth. And found a bottle of Gatorade in the refrigerator. I'm like, we're good to go now.
Yeah.
And I never slept a wink that night. I killed that fifth, and what was in it was about 2/3 of a fifth. And he showed up, and I guess he could smell me when he walked in the door.
Yeah, no doubt.
He said, I'm worried about you, man. He said, you all right to fly? I'm like, if I didn't drink, I don't know that I could fly this far right now. I said, I needed to keep from getting sick. I said, and you just get me there. All right. I'll worry about me walking through, the checkpoints in the airport. I'll walk straight enough to do all that. You just get me there. So he got me there. And, I don't even remember what we talked about on the way.
Yeah.
Or even if I talked on the way to the airport, I don't know. That'd be a question I'd have to ask him.
Yeah.
And I get there, and so I get through, the security checks and all that. So I'm like, okay, I got to find somewhere to sit down. But I need a drink before I do that. So I got a drink, and then I think I got a drink on the airplane. And I remember we went through Houston before we went to San Antonio, and I had a plane change. So I had a drink at Houston airport, and then on the plane to San Antonio. And to tell you where this is going, by the time I got there, I blew a 199.
Wow.
When I walked in the gate facility out there. But anyway.
I would think that's relatively normal for them.
Yeah. I didn't know that then.
Sure.
But
right.
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And I get finally I make it to San Antonio Airport. I get off the plane, and they give me a phone number of one of the transportation guys who goes from the ranch, was about 40 minutes away, to the airport to get me. And he's texting me. He's like, I'm in this such and such SUV, come out this entrance and all this stuff. So I'm walking out, and I'm going by the very last, I guess you would say, bar in the San Antonio airport. Right before you get to the point of no return, the last place you could buy a drink.
Right.
And I look over at that bar, and I'm like, what the hell?
One for the road.
So I walk over there, I lay my credit card on the counter, and I said, I want 2 double shots of Fireball. And I said, I want it warm. I said, it tastes too sweet when it's cold. I remember telling him that.
Yeah.
And of course, he's a bartender, and it's an airport, and he's busy, and he's talking to me, but not paying attention to me really.
Yeah.
As he's doing whatever with his hands, he's like, don't serve warm Fireball here, man. All I have is refrigerated. I'm like, all right, I'll take 2 double shots of cold Fireball. And as he turned around a minute or two later and he starts pouring, I said, you're pouring my last drink. And he kind of he looked over his shoulder, and he kind of gave me that what the hell look.
Yeah.
And I said, no shit, man. I said, you're pouring my last drink. I said, I'm on my way to get dried out. And I said, I got to quit this stuff before it kills me.
Yeah.
He said, and I'll never forget, he looks at me, and I don't think he really knew what to think right then. He looked at me about half puzzled looking. He said, well, congratulations, man. He said, I got the first one. The other one's on you.
I was going to ask, what did he charge you?
And so I bought those 2 double shots, and I just killed them back to back. And I turned around, and I walked away from the bar there to go out of the airport. And that was around noon on August the 16th of 2022. And that was the last drink I've ever bought. And I get to the facility there, and when I walk in, of course, first thing they do was COVID test me.
Yeah.
And that was one test I could pass at the time. So,
before you get to the facility, can we back up a little bit and ask a couple things? I want to ask before we get too far into it, because I think you're going to get some really neat stuff when you get inside the doors. You were talking about sitting in the room by yourself, making those phone calls, right? Mm-hmm. Earlier, we had talked about, you're just going to know when it's time. And so I think I'm asking the question from a point of not really understanding what you had felt, what an addict feels, right? If this thing has control over you, right, and you're battling these things, then how do you get to a point of knowing it's time to make that phone call? How did you know to do that?
At that point, I got to where I couldn't even lie to myself anymore about the alcohol. I would like to think for, a lot of parts of me, I tried to maintain my integrity as a human being. If you ask me, where'd you go today? Well, I tell you where I went today. But if you said, how many drinks you have today? Well, if I had 20, I'd tell you 5. Okay. And it wouldn't be like, it wasn't me trying to lie to you, which, yes, it is, but it's hard to explain unless you've been there. No alcoholic tells the truth about his alcohol.
Right.
Until he's ready to put it down. And, like there would be times that I would notice about 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the evenings, I would start feeling nauseous, and it was my body starting to crave the alcohol. Well, over a period of time, that would start happening about 2 or 3. Then about noon. Well, before you know it, I'm sicker. I'm waking up, spitting up liver bile in the shower in the morning, because I'm having withdrawals at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, just
because I've slept the night without having anything.
So do you just have windows of lucidity? I guess, would that be the right word? Do you just have these windows of time that you thought, man, I gotta do something?
Yeah, and it's like, say for example, you and I were out together somewhere on an afternoon, just hanging out, having lunch or something, and we're somewhere where we can't drink. Okay, we're at McDonald's.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're sitting here just shooting the shit about life or whatever, talking about football or something. Okay, I can tell, like, all right, I'm getting sick. But I don't want to sit here and get sick at the table in front of David. But I don't want to tell him that my body is going into alcoholic withdrawals. So I'd be, just in the middle of conversation, I'd take a swig of my Coke here or whatever, and I'd be like, man, where's the bathroom in here? I'm going to run to the bathroom real quick. Well, I'd go in there, and I'd pull an airplane shooter out of my sock, and I'd kill it. I'd wrap it up in paper towel or toilet paper, throw it in the garbage, put a piece of gum in my mouth or something. And I'd come back out here and I'd sit down. And now that that's in me, it's knocked the edge off. It's relaxed me. It's kept me from getting sick. And that's going to get me by until it either starts coming back on or till I get somewhere where I can drink. And, you could hide it for so long.
Right.
But there becomes a point when that stuff starts at, 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. How do you hide going all day getting sick? You try anything, but it's not going to work.
Right.
And I knew I was at a point, I was miserable. I was depressed. I hated myself. And I couldn't get through a day without getting sick if I wasn't drinking. And it just got to a point where I just almost went into wave the white flag surrender mode. It's like, whatever I can do to stop this.
So you went to have a conversation with the big boss.
I did. Yes.
And you said something along the lines of, hey, man, keep it between us type of deal. Keep it on the down low, right? Not ready for it to be out.
And to my knowledge, which obviously later on I brought it all to the forefront anyway, and I'm sure people that knew me well started figuring it out. You know what it's like. Chatter starts getting around. But to my knowledge, other than the couple of people on a need-to-know basis that because they were, my supervision ranks or whatever, I think he pretty well kept his word on that.
Held to that.
To my knowledge, he did.
Yeah.
Yes. And he was, he was kind to me. He was nice to me.
Yeah.
Said, I respect the fact that you're recognizing something here, and I'm wishing you the best, take care of you so you can hopefully take care of your family.
Yeah. But I mean, that changed for you at some point, right? At some point you, and I may be jumping ahead in the story, so don't let me jump too far.
You're fine.
But at some point you took a public stance to it.
I did. And I'll tell you where that changed. Again, we get back to, I didn't know anything about recovery or that type of stuff. So this is actually kind of funny. So I'm showing up to this ranch, this facility, which is, when it comes to military first responder, recovery, trauma centers, addiction center, I mean, it's kind of the gold standard. It's a nice place. And so I'm in there and I'm telling them, I'm like, look, no disrespect to the program. I don't want to be in no trouble here. But if I didn't drink, I said, I would have got sick on the airplane. And I said, I had to drink to get here. I said, but now I'm here now. I'm not drinking anything else. And I said, but when this wears off, I said, I'll start going into withdrawals. And I said, it's not just handshakes and sweats. I said, I get violently sick, dry heaving, this, stomach and liver bile because there wasn't nothing in me as far as getting sick. It was just bile. And she's like, well, we've got you'll have medical care here, and in our detox, we have nurses on staff that they'll be checking you throughout the evening and all. And of course, I'm like, well, you don't understand. Like, I get violently ill. I don't want to wake up people another. Here's me telling them.
As if you're the only one, right?
Like I'm the only guy that's ever come through here that's done this.
I know you've not dealt with this before.
Right. You don't understand how I do it, okay? And, but
where's the bar?
Right. Yeah. And, but they checked me into detox there, and I had to be monitored for 3 days medically.
They're probably going back in the back room like, good gracious, here's another one.
Yeah. There's like, here's this. Oh, goodness, this one's from Kentucky.
Yeah, this will be a trip.
How'd he end up out here? And, but man, I remember the nurse that first night. Yeah, bless her heart. I went out there to visit recently, and I tried to go find her at the ranch to thank her, a sincere thank you. Yeah. Because I owe her a lot, and she was off. She wasn't there that day. But I remember she was from Canada, had a little bit of an accent, and my nurse had to come wake me up every 2 hours that first night, because alcohol withdrawals can be pretty dangerous, obviously. And I remember every time she woke me up to take my vitals, I had to change clothes, and she had to change my bed sheets.
Sweating.
Yeah. And it wasn't like you go for a jog and, you get the ring around your neck or your armpits. I mean, like, I looked like I'd stood under the shower. It was disgusting. And, but, they were awesome. They took good care of me. And, I'm sleeping a lot those first couple of days. And, there was a lot of just looking at the ceiling, how did we get here? Yeah. Just thinking to myself, how did we end up here? And obviously at this point, I'm miserably depressed, and just the world is black. It's just like a black hole of hell inside your mind. I don't know how to even describe it. And I'm still one of those, like, I was never one to talk about my problems, really. Didn't want anybody knowing my problems. But I checked into detox, which was there on site on a Tuesday, afternoon, and I got out into, with all the other clients on Friday. And I remember the first group therapy session that I went to. I'm in a room full of, it was everything from active duty military colonels to, people who are barely above rookie status, whether you be first responder or military, you name it, they were there in some form or fashion. And I went, and what the big wake up call for me is I remember in that first group session, I look around the room, and of course we're all on the same level.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you could be a Navy SEAL in there, which there are people of that type status out there. Okay, the good thing about it, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
And so we're sitting there, and you go around the room, and all these people, these grown men and women, start sharing stories. And a lot of them had already been there a few weeks.
Yeah.
And they start telling stories in this group session. And as they talk, you're like, man, that's exactly what I've been going through. Or, they tell little stories like, okay, my MO, when I would get up to take a shower in the morning, as soon as I get in the bathroom, I turn the shower on, whether I was in it or not. Because if I started dry heaving, the shower noise kept Ashley from hearing me dry heave.
Yeah.
Well, you'd hear people tell stories like that. They'd be like, yeah, man, I'd start flushing the toilet one after another while I was heaving so I wouldn't wake my wife up, and I was like, I used to do that shit.
Yeah.
And when you start hearing all these other grown men and women share a lot of these stories and a lot of these intimate details about their life, then you start realizing, what, it is all right to talk about this.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the first trigger point to me to where it was like, it is okay to start letting some of this stuff out. And it's not a sign of weakness, because you look at these people and you're like, which at that time I didn't know who all these people were, but you later find out, okay, if that guy's a Green Beret and he could admit that he was sitting, in a dark room by himself crying at night, well, if he can admit it, then I guess I can admit that so was I.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I sure ain't no tougher than that guy.
Right.
And that is where I think the type of facility that I went to, considering the background we come from, played a big role in helping me.
Was the place in Utah the same type of facility?
I think so.
Of course, they didn't answer the phone.
Yeah, they didn't answer the phone, and it turned out to be a blessing in disguise.
Sure did, yeah. And
maybe they're a great place, but the way I see it, the place I went to, when I say I owe them my life, I literally owe them my life. And
I think that's a testament to you went to the right place.
Yeah. Yeah. And recovery is one of those things. It's, again, we're all human. We're all different. What works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. And that place worked for me.
Yeah, that's right.
It was amazing.
How long were you there?
It is, once you get out of detox days don't count. Obviously, I had alcohol in my system when I showed up, so I did have to be detoxed. I was detoxed for 3 days, and then it is a 6-week, 42-day program.
Huh.
But you can extend. I wanted to extend 2 weeks, but unbeknownst to me, Ashley was changing jobs while I was gone. It was actually a good career opportunity come up for her that she was excited about. It was a good thing. And but she started what would have been my 8th week.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't want me flying home alone. The plan all along was for her to fly out there and come home with me, which good call on her part, by the way. And so I couldn't extend 2 weeks or anything past 2 weeks because her in first month of her job couldn't take off work. So I talked to them at Warrior's Heart, and they were gracious enough to work with me, and they let me do a 1-week extension. And so I was there 49 days in the program, 52 days total.
Yeah.
from August the 16th to, I believe it was October the 4th, I think.
How'd you deal with the detox? What was that like? Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah. The detox building, it's basically, it has one little, I guess you would call a community room. Just has like a couch and a chair. They have a dog in there.
Yeah.
He's actually a certified emotional support animal. He lives there, lives in the detox. Yeah. Sometimes I would go out there and lay on the couch, and I mean, just felt like crud, man. Felt like I've been hit by a Peterbilt. And I remember that old dog. He would come and he would lay down beside me, and I would just lay there on my back, scratching him. As every now and then I probably talk to him like, how the hell did we get here, man? Yeah. But it had this little community room in it, and then it had 3 hallways. And down the hallways there would be like a bathroom at the end of the hallway, and then 1 or 2 bedrooms there. And but usually if there's 5 or 6 in detox at once, that's a lot. Usually, I think the most that was in there while I was there was 3, maybe 4 of us. But after a day or so, they'll let you leave detox to go to the cafeteria to get your meals. Up until then, they brought them to me. I don't smoke, but if you're a smoker, there was a smoking area just outside of detox. They would allow you to go out to that little gazebo area. But other than that, you had to stay pretty close. They kept you pretty closely monitored, which is totally understandable.
Sure. Yeah. Physically, how are you adjusting to it?
That second day, I guess it would have been the Wednesday, I slept a lot. And I think they give me, and it's crazy that I can't tell you what it is, but I blew $199 when I got there. So right. Lots of those little details are fuzzy, but I had told them, I tried to tell them, be straight with them on everything, because I didn't want to lay there dry heaving for 3 days. And they give me something for the nausea, and it helped a lot. I never got like vomiting sick, but I shaking bad. Like if I had to picture something like peas or corn or something, I would spill a spoon putting it up to my mouth.
Yeah.
And a lot of sweats and just feeling just run down and just totally drained, lifeless. Like we weren't allowed to do much in detox, and it didn't matter because I couldn't have done much anyway.
Is their program their own program, or is it like an AA based program? Or
they do have a 12-step AA based program. It of course you have a mixture of people in there. You have some people who are addicts. You have some people who are alcoholics. You have some people, I guess we would refer to as a dual, both. But they did have a 12-step program, but you stayed on a very strict schedule. Like you got up, and I don't have one of the schedules in front of me, but like you eat at 7:00, or you had roll call at 7:00, you eat at 7:30. You had, either yoga, or those of us that were in the K9 program at 8. At 10:00, you had a group therapy session with your group. At 12, you eat. At 1, you had electives, which could be, actually it's pretty therapeutic. The electives were nice, like art. I started painting while I was there.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. You sure did.
I started painting. They had a wood shop there. Then, of course, you eat at the same time in the evenings. Also, during those elective hours, so many hours a week, you meet one-on-one with, you have 2 therapists. One is a chemical dependency therapist, and one is a trauma therapist. Your meetings with them is where you really start breaking down a lot of stuff and offloading a lot of stuff, a lot of information. It's, there are times that those therapy sessions would get exhausting, but at the same time, you walk out of there just feeling like the weight of the world has been pulled off your shoulder. I don't even have the words to describe how you would feel coming out of there. And I was blessed, man. I was blessed beyond measure because both of my therapists were amazing.
Do they, I don't know what I'm asking here. So you just have to work through my questions.
No, shoot me up, man. We got this.
Yeah, that's right. This is the authentic part. Do they guide you down the path of why you ended up where you are? Or
yes. Of course, they already know somewhat of a background on you.
Okay.
But when you start sitting down in your one-on-ones, and I will say, I told them everything. There was no hiding nothing. The deepest, darkest secret in the world that I wouldn't want anybody knowing about me, chances are one of those two therapists knows about it.
Yeah.
And as long as you are a straight shooter and you are telling the full effects of what you're going through, the situations that you're having, they then start pulling a lot of this information out of you. They they have obviously clinical ways of working through this stuff with you. And it doesn't just stop there. I will say another good thing about this program out there is I had to have my therapy planned out when I got home. Mm-hmm. Like that's part of leaving. You have to have an exit plan. And I had to have a therapist assigned to me in Bowling Green where I live. And I had to, I know one of my therapists made me download an app on my phone that showed all AA meetings in Bowling Green because I knew where one was. I went to one or two. I was present in body. I wasn't really present in mind before I went, but I didn't know nothing about it. I didn't know hardly anybody that was in AA. And, I was telling them that out there because we had to go to AA meetings out there. And I was like, I don't know what to do when I get home. And they're like, we got this.
Yeah.
Right? You're not the first guy that showed up here from Kentucky. Okay. And man, we did. I had therapists lined out. I had AA meetings lined out. I had everything lined out when I left. But the most important thing is it don't matter how good of a treatment center you go to, and it doesn't matter. You can have the best therapist in the world, just like being the police or playing a sport or anything else. If you don't use the tools you're taught and don't use the tools that are provided, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I'm just as devoted to going to meetings, keeping up on my materials. Everything that I was doing when I got home, I still do today, with very few exceptions. And most of the exceptions are because now when I got home, of course, I come home, I retired almost immediately or like a month later. I had a period of time there, 6-8 weeks, I wasn't working at the beginning of retirement. I mean, I could go to a therapy session and then 6-7 AA meetings a week or, 5-6 AA meetings. Well, now, I mean, I work full time and then I have a part-time job 2 nights a week. I can't physically do that, but to the best of my ability, I get to as many meetings as I can.
Yeah.
Like, there's one I do virtually every week. Then there's one in my home group I go to every week. And then the part-time job I have is at a recovery center also. And one of the nights that I work, we take them to a meeting. So I'm almost guaranteed to always get in 3 at least a week. And I try to get 4 more if I can.
Wow. And now how long has that been since you left Texas?
October of 2022.
22.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So we're about 1.5 years or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, it's the best decision I ever made in my life. When I tell you that times were dark, looking back on it now, it's just, it's scary really, to be in that deep of a depressed, state that literally you lay your head on a pillow. And I mean, I had a nice home. I had 2 healthy children who are my everything.
Mm-hmm.
Marriage had its issues, but don't all marriages?
Right.
Nothing that couldn't be worked through.
You don't want to sound cliche, but you had the perfect setup. You had the stereotypical perfect setup. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was, I had served my time in my career, could have walked away that day. I had a pension.
Yeah.
And, have all that going for you and literally put your head on a pillow at night with the thought of, maybe I won't wake up tomorrow, you know? And it's, people are like, people don't understand how you can get to that state, but it's not like you do it on purpose,
Or that it happens in one day.
Yeah. Or that it happens in one day. Yeah. Now you do wake up one day and realize, damn, I'm here.
It happened.
Yeah. It happened.
How'd we get here?
Yeah. But, and then when I got home too, something else that really helped me is I went through several sessions of, we're going to change pace a little bit on this art therapy. But when I say art this time, I'm talking about with a therapist. And I always look down because for whatever reason, I always say it wrong, but it's accelerated resolution therapy. And I had discussed it with this therapist in Bowling Green when I first got home. And what it is it's very, very similar to EMDR, sort of, if you've heard of that, where you it allows you to process traumatic events in your life. And I had heard about it. And due to the fact that I needed to come home and retire, and some various things, of course, wife, children, everybody was at home, it was not real feasible for me to stay in Texas and move into the sober living house because this facility also has a sober living house right down the street. And that wasn't real feasible. So a lot of the aftercare that I was doing, I was going to have to set up in Bowling Green when I got home. And that was one of them. And when I got home, I got to talking to my therapist about this accelerated resolution therapy. And she said, well, this is basically crazy coincidence here. She said, this would have been around the 1st of November, I guess within a couple of weeks of me getting back. She said, either in December or January, I'm getting certified on that. I actually had initially asked her about the EMDR, and then she brought this up to me, which I had never heard of, but said it was similar, and said, I'm getting certified on that. And I said, then I'd like to stay with you until you get certified and go through some of this and see what it does for me, because there's still a lot of, I'm sober now, and I'm going through the steps with that, and I feel comfortable in the direction I'm going. But there's a lot of this other stuff that we probably still need to work on. And so, we done this. And what this is basically she will do a series of hand movements, and I'm moving my hand side to side, almost in a swearing in position, but right. You're moving your hand side to side, and I'm to focus on her hand or whatever object she has in her hand. And she has a series of questions she asks me, and we prepare for it. We go over the questions, and we go over the traumatic event of whatever it is that we're going to talk about. And, man, the first time she ever done it, and she stood in front of me and starts going like this and asking me these questions, I ain't gonna lie, first thought went through my mind is I just waited 4 months for this freaking clown show. What in the hell are we doing here?
Right.
Okay. But
you sure you passed your certification test?
Yeah, I'm like, this is dumb as all get out, man. Well, I feel like I'm playing a child's game here. But I just like everything else I went through, I was like, if I'm going to do this, we're going to go all in. We'll give 110%. If it works, it works. It don't. And she said, well, what traumatic events do you want to go over first? And you'll get a kick out of this. I said, before we get into the serious stuff, the disturbing things in life and some of these gory details of things I've seen and all this, I said, I know something we can work on here. I said, there's a person that I may or may not have worked with. And I said, I don't like this guy. But I said, when I tell you I don't like this guy, I'd want to clean your windows with his ass if he walked in this room right now. I really don't like this person. And I feel like this person has wronged me on a major level. And I said, can you do stuff like that? I said, because I'm going to be honest with you, I'm tired of hating this person.
Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds silly, but I was serious.
Yeah.
And she said, we can absolutely do that. And I said, here's the deal. And this is who it is. And told her what she needed to go through her stuff. And one more thing I had her do is I had trouble focusing on a palm of somebody's hand. She even put a white card in her hand. And I don't know, I don't know if she has a rich husband or what, but she had a rock on her wedding ring finger that looked like it was the size of a basketball. It was a beautiful ring. I say that in a way, it's a very pretty ring. I said, will you take that engagement ring? Can you spin that thing around to where the diamond is looking at me? And for the next hour, I followed the diamond in the middle of her hand with my eyes as we went through all this stuff. And it made a believer out of me, man. It was the real deal. What I thought was going to be a total clown show, it really helped in a lot of ways. And we done multiple other sessions, processing various things, events. And, there's a lot of stuff that honestly, until I was sitting here having this conversation with you, I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah.
But a lot of that stuff that probably used to cross my mind a lot, I haven't even really thought about it since then.
Yeah.
And he knows I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He can probably tell I'm a little fidgety, I guess, talking about some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Mac is our first service dog he's our first dog cast.
Oh yeah. For the people listening, I've got my dog here with me. That was part of my treatment program in Texas, which is something else, man. To touch on that real quick, Mac here, one of the first reasons I got him is, we discussed some of the stuff episodes I was having in my sleep.
Yeah.
Physically punching my wife in my sleep. And, you wake up, you feel horrible because obviously I didn't know I was doing it. He's actually trained to wake me up in those episodes. And there are other things, as you can tell, he could see I was getting a little fidgety, I guess, and hashing a lot of this stuff. And he gets up and comes over here to me. And, but more than anything, honestly, man, since I've got him, I never would have thought it, but it's just having him with me all the time is just, it's been a game changer.
How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes where I go, and he's been awesome. But, yeah.
So did you ever, did anybody, and again, if I don't need to ask, just tell me, but did anybody ever, did you have PTSD? Is that a diagnosis?
Yes. And
did that come from career?
Yes. And where that started coming out is when I was meeting with the therapist, we started talking about a lot of the depression issues, obviously the addiction, alcohol issues. and different things. And I went in one day and I was meeting with my trauma therapist, and I could tell, because I had been seeing her for a couple of weeks now out in Texas, several hours a week. And I could tell the line of questioning changed. I could just tell, I mean, our one-on-one interaction was going great as always, but I could tell it was different. I could tell some of the things she was asking, some of the quote unquote rabbit holes we were going down, for lack of better words, were different. And about halfway through that session, she even told me, she said, the next couple of sessions, we're going to mix things up a little bit. Because she says, I know you've told us about your depression issues and all of that, but she says, I think we're beyond just depression issues. She says, I know you may not realize it yet, but she said, I think you have a lot of PTSD issues that you may not know you have. And man, when she said that, it was like, the skies opened up and a light shined down on my forehead. And it was like, yeah, no shit, dumbass.
Now let's get to the dark stuff.
She figured out in a couple of hours what you hadn't figured out in 20 years. And, but that is where that started coming out. And, and I never would have dreamed it, because we don't look at it as we have PTSD, because we were never in. Because when you hear PTSD, you think of Vietnam veterans, or that's what I always thought.
Your military examples you gave,
stuff like that, and that just never crossed. You just didn't think of that. I just thought I was a depressed human being who had a drinking problem.
Do you think that? Do you think this is a much, well, not going to say widespread problem, but I don't know how to say it. Is this a bigger problem than we realize?
It's absolutely a bigger problem than we realize. And I hope, whether it be the military being an obvious, but whether it be law enforcement agencies, fire agencies, and again, we can't forget those EMTs, because when you and I would see these gruesome scenes, they were physically working on these people.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And and even again, I'll talk about our civilian employees and our dispatchers and a lot of those folks. There has to be programs set up, because and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the suicide rates among those professions we just named it's gotten insane. It is. I mean, it's gotten, and I'm not going to lie. I was that guy that, I always thought, well, somebody commits suicide, that's a selfish bastard.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would you put somebody through that?
And we know a couple people have done that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then after going through such a state of depression, you realize when you're at rock bottom like that, and I know it's hard to explain this to anybody that's not been there, you don't view it like that. You don't think about, well, how's my family going to feel, or my buddy Dave going to feel if I done that to myself? Yeah. That just doesn't enter your mind.
You're not at the right spot to even comprehend that type of
you don't
thought process.
Not at all. And I'm sure you've been asked as well. People will ask us all the time. They'll be like, "Man, tell me some stories.
Yeah.
Tell me some cool shit that you saw people do.
Yeah.
Or tell me some crazy stuff." And well, one question that I always got asked, it was kind of weird, but I'd always answer it, is they're like, "Would you ever get scared?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, we don't like to admit that, but if you think somebody's about to pull a weapon on you or something, anybody says that don't put a little fear in you is full of shit.
Yeah, it's a pretty stressful moment.
Yeah. If you say that doesn't scare you a little bit, you're lying, okay? Right. I'll just newsflash. They're lying to you.
Yeah.
And people would say, like, what was the most scary event you were ever in? Did somebody do this or that? Well, when I used to get asked that question, I'd sit and think, okay, what was the hairiest event I was in? This time there was that time I about got run over, or there was that time we thought that dude was going to shoot at us with his rifle, or, you think of that stuff. But now, being in a better state of mind, probably the scariest events that I ever had would be when I was off duty at home in my recliner in a room by myself with a bottle in my hand, because that is by far when I was in the most danger to myself.
Yeah. Awesome answer.
Yeah. That is by far the scariest part of my career, looking back on it. And, it's, and one reason, I don't want to say enjoy talking about this, but in some ways I do, because this is still somewhat therapy for me to get to talk about a lot of this stuff.
Sure it is.
And get it out. But we started touching on it earlier, and I think I sidetracked and got to talking about something, but we were talking about where, when I first went and talked to the head of my agency, and, we had that private conversation. I was like, look, I don't really want people knowing this and all this. And, well, fast forward to when I did decide, okay, we're going to have to talk about this. People's going to wonder, where's he been for 2 months? And, here's, a captain in an agency that has just disappeared for 2 months. Somebody's going to recognize the fact he's not here.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was a popular topic of conversation when I was in Texas. Is, people would ask, the active duty guys that were still in the military would be like, how do I go back in front of my men? Them knowing that I've been out here and, recovering from alcoholism or addiction or PTSD trauma or whatever the case. And I'll never forget, and she wasn't even one of my therapists, but she was talking about it in a group session. I still know who she is, and I can see her saying it right now, is this particular therapist out there spoke up, and she said, well, what I would recommend is you just hit it head on and don't wait to be asked. Tell them, this is where I went. I was an alcoholic who was dealing with depression, PTSD, whatever your case is. And I was dealing with those things, and I come to realization that I couldn't fix it on my own. And I made the best decision I ever made in my life, and I went and got help.
Yeah.
And I got help from people who understood, knew how to help me with the issues that I have.
Because by this point, you're realizing you're not the only one that's ever been there.
Right. At this point, I feel comfortable, because let me tell you, I thought the hardest thing I would ever do in my life would be to walk in the front gates of that ranch and check myself in to rehab, recovery, whatever you want to, how you want to word it. But that was by far not the hardest thing I ever done.
Yeah.
The hardest thing I ever done was to walk back off of that ranch to come home, because you're scared to death to come back. I
wouldn't have had that answer till just listen to your story. I was like, yeah.
Because now you're scared. Because when I got out there with all these guys, I mean, we got close.
Yeah.
I played football in high school and sports growing up, and, went through 2 training academies. And you know how you get a bond with people you go through these things with, and you get that one out there was different.
Yeah.
It was different. You're going through something different. And there are people like we keep a group text going, man, I've got people in Wyoming, Texas, North Carolina. My roommate was from Louisiana.
Yeah.
Man, I'd fly across country to sit down with them if they needed anything.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know how to explain it. And with those men and women, the first thing you have to do in recovery is you got to learn to love yourself again. Because if you don't learn to love yourself, what else can you love in life? And with that group of guys and gals, I not only learned to love myself again, but I learned to laugh again.
Yeah.
I learned to have conversation again, and you learn how to laugh and like really laugh.
Right.
Okay. We can all laugh, there's always somebody's going to tell that joke and you're going to be like, that's pretty good, man. I never heard that.
Yeah.
And you're going to turn around like I've heard it 10 times and it's still not funny.
Yeah.
But, you learn how to really laugh again.
Yeah.
And really, like I went from absolutely hating life to I catch myself now. I'll walk outside and I'll be like, man, it's nice out here today. And then I'll be like, either I'm getting old or I'm getting better.
Maybe both.
I actually appreciate the sunshine and, appreciate that it's a pretty day. And before I couldn't have told you if it was raining, snowing, or what it was doing out there.
Yeah.
Because it was always raining in my head.
Yeah.
But it's, it's a process, and there's nothing about it that's easy. But it was truly the best decision I ever made in my life.
Without a doubt.
I'm very thankful for a lot of people and a lot of things that help make it possible. But what I was getting into is the reason that I don't mind to talk about it now, and I really have come forward with it, is it has nothing to do with me. Because anybody that says, well, is this just a hey, look at me thing? Well, if you think I'm proud to sit here and tell you about all the stupid shit I've done and how I was drinking myself to death, then you're crazy. Because, nobody's proud to talk about that. But if me telling you of all my I shouldn't even say my shortcomings, but because a lot of the trauma, I didn't know how to handle it. And I didn't know the road it was taking me down until it was too late. But if me telling you about where I was and how I got there keeps just one person from going to where I was at, then it's all worth it.
Yeah.
I can talk to 100 people, and if 99 of them think I am just full of piss and vinegar and blowing smoke and laugh me out of the room, if there's one person in there that it hits home with, then it was well worth it. I don't care what the other 99 think.
Yeah, you don't need the other 99 anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you think you talked a little bit about, how am I going to go back and be with my men or whatever? Do you think that fear of return is a major barrier to people getting help?
Yes, and not even a lot of it is not just the fear of return, as into where, say, I was a supervisor in a supervisory position at the time. It's not even a fear of as much the men respecting you and all that, which that is a big part of it, yes. But it's the fear of, I went from an absolute miserable alcoholic to a pretty happy person in a 7-week, 52-day span on that little ranch in Texas. And once you find that happiness, you are scared to death you're going to lose it again, because you're going right back out into that world that just sent you in here. Is
it an acceptance fear, like your fear of being accepted for your new person? It's
a fear of being accepted. It's a fear of failure. It's a fear of, okay, in this safe environment on this ranch in Texas where I had therapists and nurses and camaraderie to keep everything kosher. Okay, well, my therapist isn't going home with me.
Yeah, that's right.
And so-and-so over there, your roommate's going back to Louisiana.
Yeah.
And your other buddy's going to Texas and Wyoming and Colorado and all these places that they were from, Michigan and
truthfully, 50
Washington.
days is not very many days.
No. And, it's just an overall fear of going back out into the unknown, because at this point, even though you know the world you're going out in, it's now an unknown to you again.
Yeah.
And it's a very interesting feeling.
Yeah.
I was far more nervous coming out of there than I was going in there.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. How are you with being around alcohol? What does that look like to you?
Well, I can only speak for me, because I've talked to alcoholics who are highly offended if their significant other has a drink, or they won't go to anything where alcohol's very heavily involved. And I guess for me, this might sound awful, but which my wife, like I said, she's a social drinker, and that's not the part that I was talking about sounding awful, but she can casually have a drink and it doesn't bother me. One, I don't want to punish her for the fact I can't do it. And two, the stuff she drinks, like what I said, that spice rum, stuff tastes like dog shit to me anyway. And even if I could drink, I ain't drinking none of that. So, I don't want to punish her. And again, she doesn't have a problem. And she just does it, she'll have a drink to relax and watch her TV shows or whatever, or casually. And I don't have a problem with that. And then, but what I was going to say kind of sounds bad is all my activities that I've done, Titans games.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know you're a Colts fan. When you go to a Colts fan, or when you go to a Colts game, chances are you're going to have one drunk close to you.
Yeah.
Most all of them's going to be drinking.
Right.
Okay. And, I go to a lot of dirt track races. That's just something I like. I like racing. I like dirt track racing. Well, if you go to a good old country redneck dirt track, there is so much alcohol around you that you could probably PBT my T-shirt when I leave there.
Yeah.
And it's going to register from the people breathing on me. You know what I'm saying? So, and over that first year of sobriety, there was all these tests. There was that first Titans game.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you're like, okay, because I got season tickets. So I'm like, well, we're going to have to go at some point. So there's that first holiday.
Yeah.
First New Year's. And then that first dirt track race. And, man, as you start kind of subconsciously marking all those off the list, you're like, you know what? I had just as much fun at that race this summer as I did last summer.
Yeah.
And I didn't wake up feeling like a sack full of ass in the morning.
Yeah.
And I had just as much fun at the Titans game, other than they were a better team last year. And we suck now. But I had just as much fun at that ball game, as I used to. And also it makes it more fun because due to a lot of whether it be going through the recovery, no longer drinking, we talked about the art therapy, the different things. You just appreciate everything a lot more, I think. It's different. You just appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah.
And you appreciate life a lot more. I know I do. And when I didn't know how I was going to make this public, so to speak.
Yeah.
And not that I'm anybody special, it's not like it's the president about to make a speech or anything, but, if you have something like that in your life, you're going to have a lot of long-time friends that didn't know it, or, they're going to be, unbeknownst to them, asking you to go out and have some drinks at the ball game. And so when Ashley come to pick me up in Texas, I think it was 2022. So how else do you tell people stuff? Facebook, right? I mean, that's how we learn everything anymore, right?
Right.
Facebook, TikTok, where else you going to learn it?
That's right.
So I made a post.
Yeah.
And it was a long-winded one, but just like I've been dealing with some things, and I kind of specified what they were: depression, PTSD, alcoholism. said I've been in Bandera, Texas at Warrior's Heart for 52 days. And I think I even had a picture of my dog on there. I said, Ashley's on her way out here to get me, and we're flying home tomorrow, and just come clean with all of it. So I just hit it right in the kisser before anybody ever had a chance to even ask me about it. And then too, the good reason for doing it like that is the people that truly care know, and you're going to hear from them.
Yeah.
The people that probably have something vindictive to say or don't believe you or whatever, that would come up and probably inappropriately say, so man, I ain't seen you in a while. Where you been at?
Yeah.
Well, now you've just took their glory away from them, and you just answered it in front of everybody. They don't have the chance to do that. And, but the next thing I'm going to tell you is what I didn't know was coming. And that's when I did come out and come clean, so to speak, or come out and say this, was the private messages you start getting, whether it be by text or by social media message. And when I say private, I mean random, buddy. Like, I might hear from someone that I literally have not laid eyes on in 30 years, since high school or something. And they'd be like, hey, I saw what you said, and my spouse is in the military, and they go to, they struggle with, I don't want to say much, but, they have this or that or this. And I was just, sometimes it'll be simply, I was just asking you how you felt when you went through this, or where did you go get help? Or they may have a multitude of questions. And I was surprised by the people that reached out. And I was like, if me saying something gives someone else just a glimmer of hope, or shows them that, I assure you, Derek Grant don't have all the answers, and I sure am not no therapist or anything. But there is one thing I can promise. I can't promise I can fix anything or I can have any answers, but I can promise you, if you do the right things, it does get better.
Yeah.
It can get better. And the first person I ever heard say that, and I can't believe I'm saying one of my favorite quotes comes from an NBA basketball player, because usually when they open their mouth in front of a microphone on some type of sensitive topic, I'm like, oh my gosh, they really just say that. But I say that jokingly, but there's a basketball player named Kevin Love, McDonald's All-American in high school. I mean, absolute stud ball player out of Oregon, committed to UCLA, blue chip program. And went on to win NBA championship. He's on, I think, his third team, but he played for the Timberwolves and won a championship with LeBron in Cleveland. Went through severe depression. We're talking an NBA player who's got a 7-figure salary, has won on every level, has been dominant at some point in his life on every level. Yeah. And he went through depression and various things. And I remember one time I got to where I would follow him and I would read a lot of the stuff that he put out. And one time I saw him make the statement that I can't promise you anything, but I can promise you one thing. Or he said, I can't promise you that I can fix anything, but I can promise you that it does get better. It's okay to not be okay, and it does get better. Yeah. And I don't know, him saying that's always stuck with me in a lot of ways. But
I was going to ask you as kind of an ending question, but you brought it up now. What would your advice be to someone who's listening to you that needs to hear what you have to say?
My best advice, the first and foremost thing that I would tell any young first responder, military personnel, anything like that in that line of work. It could even be nurses or doctors as far as that goes. First responder type of profession, that it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah.
And we are all human, and it is not a sign of weakness. Actually, it's a sign of strength.
Yeah.
Because it takes a whole lot more to ask for help than to not. And, there are programs out there. You can talk about things. And I totally get, people like what I was, they're like, I don't want to go home and make this supper time conversation, of what I saw last night. I get it. Okay. And you don't have to. But there are people you can talk to, and you can, whether it be a therapist or whatever, or, because you can't bottle that stuff up, but for so long.
Yeah.
And you don't know where that breaking point is until you're already there.
Yeah.
You don't see it coming. It just arrives.
It's just there.
And, I think a lot of agencies, especially the larger ones, are moving in a direction where they're starting to educate, and make it more to where it's not so taboo to talk about it. Because can you imagine, you think, when we started 20 plus years ago, I can't imagine hearing another policeman say, I'm depressed. And all this stuff I've been seeing is just breaking me down on the inside. I mean, I never would have dreamed.
Yeah.
Not only that, I never would have dreamed I would be the one saying it.
Yeah.
And so, always take care of you is a big piece of advice I would have. Because if you don't take care of you, how are you going to take care of anything else? Yeah. Whether it be children, spouse, family, daily life. And I know, I've said it about a lot of things, but, I've tried to take nuggets of information along the way, and, people giving you different advice and things like that. And, taking care of you is probably that definitely ranks, at the top of, because a lot of times when we think of taking care of ourselves, you think, well, that's arrogant. Right. I got a wife, I got 2 kids.
Well, there's so much been ingrained into us for selfless right. service.
And, I had, this was the same therapist that told me that other piece of advice I was telling you earlier. September the 2nd is my oldest daughter's birthday. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 2022, she would have been turning 14 on September the 2nd. And I was in Texas. Obviously, I can't leave and come back for her birthday. And I was at a point by September 2nd, I'd been there several weeks. I was really getting my feet under me. I was getting really involved in the program, and things were on the up and up for me. And I was kind of, I guess you could say, starting to see the light, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But September 2nd was that was a hard ass day.
Yeah, ma'am.
And I mean, you picture a group therapy room, probably had 20 grown men and women in it. And we're sitting there having a therapy session, and I'm sitting there in my chair, literally bawling like a baby through all of it. To a point, at one point, I got up and walked outside the room because I didn't want to affect anybody else's session. And I remember telling a therapist, I said, it's my daughter's birthday. And I feel like I'm not, I'm missing her birthday.
Yeah.
Because I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm here because I'm a depressed traumatized alcoholic, and I'm missing my daughter's birthday. I mean, how much worse, what kind of loser am I?
Yeah.
And I'll never, ever forget, she looked at me and she said, "You're right. You're missing her birthday, but you're missing this one so you can see all the rest of them."
Yeah.
And I was like, I'll be damned.
You got me there.
Yeah, I thought I finally thought, if I brought the kids into this, I had something I could stump y'all on. And
you go and say something just like
you
that.
Come off with that horse shit.
All right, I'm going to go back in now.
Yeah, all right. That's
Take my seat.
That's all I got. I'm going to go back and have my sit down.
Do you find yourself being in a mentor position?
In a lot of ways, I don't force it on anybody.
Of course, that takes a lot of different variations, right?
It does. And I don't force it on anybody.
Right.
If I thought right now, if I thought you, had all the problems I had, all right, and you were at that point to where, life's bad. You're going to lose your house or your wife or your life. Or, if I thought you were in that place, I probably wouldn't look you in the eye and say, you need to get your ass on an airplane or in a car and go somewhere and get what you need.
Yeah.
But I would probably explain to you in a lot of ways where your life was, where it's going, and you probably ought to do some serious soul searching.
Yeah.
Because it can get better, and you don't want to see the end result of where it could be going.
Yeah.
And you might not even be there to see it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
and because there's one thing, especially on not only with the PTSD type situations, but definitely on the alcoholism or addiction, you're not going to cure any alcoholic in the world, nor any addict in the world. There's nothing Derek Grant or Dave Jude can do for any of them until they come to you and say, yeah, I've got a problem and I know I need some help.
Yeah.
And because with me, there was no getting me to do anything until I decided, okay, and there's an old saying amongst alcoholics that they've taught me over the last couple of years is, there'll be people that are in dire need of help, and they'll try to get sober and then go right back out there. And kind of the common phrase is, well, he apparently hadn't lost enough yet.
Mm. Yeah.
So, and you want to give people the best advice you can without pushing on them too hard, and just hopefully they'll see it.
Because they got to get to their moment.
You
can't make them get to their moment. They've got to get to their moment.
And I tell people where I went through recovery, in my opinion, for my circle of people, for the people that I've, first responders, military, that type of folks, you will not find a finer place in the country to go for help. And they've recently built a second location in Virginia, and I've never been to the Virginia location. Obviously, my life changed at the one in Texas, so I'm always going to be a little biased to that. But you will not find a finer place in the world to heal and to address a lot of your needs. However, you only get out of anything what you put in it. And if you don't go in there with the right mindset, because they're, it's like anything. They have you do things that you're like, this doesn't make sense. What does this have to do with my trauma or my alcoholism? But, there's a method to the madness and everything. And, if you go in there with the right mindset, it's wonderful. But, you have to be ready.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to have links. We'll put links in the show notes to them and to everybody else anyone that you think needs to be in the show notes. So we'll get with you.
Okay, sure thing.
Tell us what you want shared.
Okay.
You can put that in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What else we need to cover on this?
And that's, that's kind of my story in a nutshell. Hey, buddy. That's kind of my story in a nutshell, but, I just, I encourage everybody, if you are a first responder, in any form or fashion or military, I hope this podcast catches your attention and you take the time to listen. If you don't want to listen today, maybe a day when you've got a long commute and there's nothing good on the radio and you want to hear me talk. I don't know, but it's not about me. Block out the fact that it's me or my name and just try to find the message, because if you are in that line of work, I promise you are having face-to-face contact with a coworker every day who is dealing with one of these problems.
Yeah.
That's not a maybe. That is happening.
Yeah. When you say it like that, that puts a really distinct weight into not just your words, but into the way that you and I should perceive our peers and colleagues and coworkers, et cetera, right? Because it's easy to say, I believe you.
Yeah.
And I do believe you. But it's difficult to wear that lens to say, hey, there probably is somebody that, or it's even myself that needs that help. So yeah, that's a great way to say that, man. It's not an if, it
is. It's a fact. And, and the thing about it is, I tell people, because I've had people, because a lot of people still they aren't convinced. I've had some private conversations with people that I would obviously never share, as far as who it was or anything, but they'll ask me some questions and they're like, I got some things on me that I don't know how to describe. I just want to, run it by you. I know you went to treatment and, see if maybe, and there are times, like, I'll give you a popular example. They'll ask me about the alcoholism and I'll tell them, well, this is what I went through. And they're like, oh, well, I don't get those dry heaves like that. So I'm like, well, time out, Hoss. Okay. We have human bodies. And the crazy thing is every one of them's different.
Yeah.
You may get the sweats worse than I did, or, you may get the shakes worse than me. You might not get the dry heaves at all like I did. Don't look at me as like a sole model to, well, I didn't have that problem or that problem, so I must not have the same stuff going on. Okay.
I'm not a grading scale.
Yes. Yeah. Right. We are all different. And just like we're all different in our issues, we're all different in our recoveries. And, but, I know it's coming clean with the PTSD issues had to happen for me to be able to deal with the depression and the alcoholism issues.
Yeah.
And it was by far, the best decision that I ever made, because, I tell people I've got another drunk left in me. Okay. I could go out right now and give me your best shot and I'll go I could go drink with you all night long.
Yeah.
But then where would I be?
Yeah.
And when I tell people I've got another drunk left in me, I don't know if I got another recovery left in me.
Yeah, that's well said.
And so, that's, and when you have that disease of alcoholism, once you drink, you kind of you're powerless. And it's just 1 turns into 5, that turns into 10, that turns into 15.
Yeah.
And, there are times like I might be at Double Dogs drinking beer with a buddy and he thinks we've drank 3 beers. So what he don't know is every time I went to what he thought I was going to the bathroom, I was killing an airplane shooter that was in my pocket. So, so I not only drank 2 before I got there, I drank 3 with him, and then I killed 4 or 5 shots of whiskey, and he goes home thinking we had 3 beers.
Yeah. It's a fun night.
Yeah. Fun night. Good night. Good night. Yeah. That wasn't no big deal when, that wasn't how it went down on my end. And, it wasn't how it went down on my end at all. But, that's just, but what I was saying is, you might be powerless over that 2nd, 4th, 5th, 10th 12th drink, but I'm not powerless over that first one.
Yeah.
And, I might not be able to control number 3 and 4, but I can damn well control number 1.
Number 1.
And so far, that's working pretty good. So.
Man, I'll say this. I'm really proud of you on many levels. I don't know why we weren't exposed to this, in our careers, whatever that reason is. I think there's 1,000 different reasons, right? It's either not presented. We were in different spots, both age, maturity, wisdom. I don't know why we weren't there. And you're right. There does seem to be a push now of law enforcement and first responders recognizing self-care and mental health and what that means. But I'm really proud of you because at least maybe in my world, as limited as it is, to me, well, yeah, I think I'd have to say to me, you're the trendsetter here. You're the innovator for being in an appropriate position, a place of rank, a place of stature, and well respected. You weren't this crazy personality that everybody, oh yeah, that makes sense. Whatever, it's just, you're coming from this place that I think everybody's relatable to it. And to me, you're kind of an innovator for this to say, listen, I am hitting it head on. Here's what I experienced.
And I tell people when they ask me about my career and how it affected it, I'm like, you know what? I was a damn good officer / trooper.
Yeah.
I feel like, I had the full confidence of everybody and I was very good at what I did.
Yeah.
And when I promoted to sergeant, I felt the exact same way.
Yeah.
And then as I promoted to lieutenant, I could feel the change coming on. And by the time I made captain, I don't think I was a real good captain. And it wasn't because my knowledge was any less than it used to be. And it wasn't because I didn't care, because I did care. That was what made it hard, is I did care, but I just mentally wasn't there.
Yeah.
And, so, my goal is kind of my way of amends for those captain years where I felt like, and I know I've probably done a lot of good things too, but on my standards, I feel like I really let myself down a lot. And, so I feel like I've got a more important purpose, so to speak, now of being the reason we promote is to get better and to do better for those that follow us. And so for me, it's like, don't get to that pinnacle like I did and not be on the top of your game. Be when you get there, you want to be just as good as you was at those other spots and even better.
Maybe that's your purpose. Maybe that's the universe putting you in that spot for a specific reason to,
and if it is, then I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because, at this point, I've done a lot of stupid stuff and, some of it was just stupid stuff. Some of it was a poor mental, poor mental state. And some of it was, far too much, alcohol in the bloodstream. But, either way, I'd have a hard time telling you that I'd trade any of it, because it's really all that comes together to make you who you are today. So
that's right.
That's who I am today. So,
that's right. And nothing be wrong with that. Nothing be other than pride about that. So
yeah,
it's a great place to be. And I'm glad you shared the story with us. And
I appreciate you all having me. I really do. And like I said, it's nothing about me, but about the message. And I hope that a lot of people will take the time to listen. Just especially in our field, our line of work, because it's a important issue.
That's right. It is a powerful message. This is a great episode, and I hope it reaches whoever it needs to reach. Yeah. Next time we'll do the show with Mac. You can sit in the floor and put him up in the chair.
I'll tell you what, man, you throw a tennis ball or something and he'll be all for it. So
I don't know how we'll record it yet, but we'll figure that out.
And, around home and at my new job and stuff, he's like a celebrity. It's, I'll walk in. What's funny is he goes to AA with me also. And I walk in, and they're like,
"Hey, Mac.
Oh, hey, how's Mac? What's up, Derek?
Yeah.
You too. You too. I hope you're okay, too, but I need to check on Mac.
But seriously, Mac, how's Mac doing? Yeah.
I see you looking at me.
You just get used to it, right?
He's looking up at me like, what are y'all talking about?
Yeah. He's like, that's right. That's right. All right, man. We'll call tonight. Maybe you can come back sometime and we'll keep talking. We'll do it again. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm glad you're part of the show.
I did. I appreciate you having me. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Man. All right. We'll see y'all next time.
We'll see.